Hey everybody, and welcome to This Week in Hell. Children are about to be banned from social media. Well, in Australia. Teens and kids under 16 will be banned from social media in Australia. The new laws which go into effect in about 12 months' time, after which companies such as TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, and even YouTube could be fined up to $50 million if it's found that they're not taking reasonable steps. This is the first time a law like this has been passed, but companies like Instagram have been taking new measures in recent years to restrict and protect younger members on their platforms. What is unclear is what are reasonable steps considered to be. Will it mean an immediate shutdown of all accounts? Some younger members of this platform are under the required age, but their parents technically own their accounts. Technically. Personally, I think there should be an age restriction, and 16 is reasonable, but I wouldn't be mad at a limit of 18. There are dangerous and creepy people everywhere, and at that age, kids think they cannot be harmed. They think they're invulnerable. Or they hear stories of bad things happening to other people and assume that it was just their bad luck. They're smarter than those kids. They'll be all right. I've even had to remove creepy people from my own community from time to time to protect younger members. So, on the whole, I understand. And as a content creator myself, I appreciate the intent. But I don't see how they're going to police it effectively. Because the users aren't going to care if these big firms get fines for their activity on their platforms. Perhaps the fines need to be passed on to the users, or their parents in this case. It does also run the risk of isolating people who may use social media, various outlets like Reddit and such, as their only way of connecting with communities of people like them. Young queer kids often feel like they can't talk to their families, and in many cases, they would be in danger of physical harm or even homelessness if they tried. So an online outlet is essential to them. When that goes away, what does that leave them? Especially for groups that live in areas with little to no support for the various issues that a young person might be going through. It's worth thinking about. The intent is good. Morally, I think it's sensible. More action needs to be taken. But it's a little vague right now as to what it entails. Last week, we covered the story of a man who went missing while kayaking. That story was a hoax. It was planned, he knew what he was doing, he wasn't missing, he chose to go away. But this next one is far more serious. A young man, 20-year-old named Sam Beanstick, went missing 5 weeks ago. Sam was meant to be on a 10-day camping trip, and friends and family grew concerned when he missed his return date on October 17th. He survived out there in temperatures as low as minus 20 degrees Celsius. He was found on a service road on the 26th of November. He was in pretty bad shape, but according to his mother, he should recover with time. Redfern Keeley Park is a remote area with no drinking water or shelter available to travellers. It's not an area for inexperienced hikers, which doesn't seem to be the case here with Sam, and even then he still got into trouble. We certainly wish Sam a full recovery, and are glad to hear of a missing person story that has a happy ending. Somewhat related, but not quite related to that, is another story of a missing man. This man was a California resident who had been missing for 25 years. He's been found alive, after vanishing without a trace. The man, who is identified only as Tommy at this point, went missing in 1999 in a small California town of Doyle, and both the man and his vehicle were never found. Until recently, when his sister saw a news article in USA Today seeking help in identifying a man who was found in a non-verbal state in Linwood. Upon contacting the authorities, the woman was able to inform them that she believed this man was her brother. and they were ultimately able to prove through fingerprint analysis that he was indeed the missing man, found after 2.5 decades. A GoFundMe was started to raise money to help with supplies as Tommy learns to walk again. He's still non-verbal. At present, no information has been released regarding where he has been for all this time, or what he was doing all these years. I certainly hope Tommy has a full recovery, and that he's been doing all right. Presumably he didn't know who he was all this time, and whether or not he still doesn't know who he was. It's a horrifying thing to think about. Some trauma or whatever, you wake up and then suddenly your whole life is gone. Then you spend 2.5 decades living another life, I hope, an okay life. Somebody tells you that no, that this life you've been living isn't really who you were. Next up, Arizona's back at it again with the executions. You crazy kids. After a 2-year hiatus, prisoners can once again, on death row, rest uneasy as the state resumes bumping off its financial burdens. The Attorney General is currently attempting to get a death warrant for Aaron Brian Gunches, who was convicted of first-degree murder for the killing of Ted Price in 2002. While attempting to apprehend Gunches after pulling him over in 2003, Officer Robert Flannery was shot and injured, but the officer did survive. Gunches represented himself in court in 2002, asking the court to proceed with the execution so that his victims and their families could get closure. However, the following year he would withdraw that request, stating that he believed executions in the state were equivalent to torture at that time because the infrastructure in place was somewhat barbaric. A warrant was issued in March 2023, but Governor Hobbs said that while it was issued, the state of Arizona was not required to carry it out. That order expired in April 2023. That's a basic rundown on what happened. There are far more details and nuances involved than we're going to cover right here. They might be worth looking at another time, but for now, that covers the essential parts we need to know. Since those events, the governor's office is claiming that they've gotten a lot better at killing people. Or as their representative Christian Slater, no relation, put it, they have conducted a thorough review of policies and procedures, and made critical improvements to help ensure executions carried out by the state meet legal and constitutional standards. Well, that's good, but any idiot can kill somebody else. Personally speaking, and I'm sure not everyone will agree with me, if one person is killed that shouldn't have been, the whole system is flawed. Gunches is guilty. He's not denying that he's guilty. But it's clearly not a deterrent. And it never will be. And one last story before we move on to In Memoriam today. Influencers. They are the bane of human existence. And I say this as someone who makes their living from social media. But I would never call myself an influencer. Quite frankly, I'd rather claw the skin from my own body before I did that. I have some feelings. Anyway, a social media influencer has been arrested in Florida. I mean, I think that covers it. Goodbye and good night. All right. There's more to it. There's more to it. Marlena Velez, a TikTok user with more than 300,000 followers, was arrested after trying to steal from a Target in Florida. It gets worse and worse. To perpetuate the theft, she selected her items, then went to the self-checkout, scanned the barcodes with cheaper prices on them to make it look like she had correctly paid for her items. This is an old scam, but with more modern technology. Back when I used to work in retail, I came across people trying to do this. They'd swap out one sticker for a cheaper one, and regardless of how you look at it, it is theft. I mean, back then, the people were doing that to items that were already reduced in the store I worked in. They just wanted them even cheaper, which... take the win and go, you know? They probably call it a hack these days, but theft is a more accurate legal term, and it is the term the courts will be using when Marlena goes to trial. Police took to social media asking for help identifying the woman, and an anonymous caller let them know it was allegedly Marlena and supplied them with her social media accounts. I'd imagine they had a big grin on their face as they did so, because she's clearly annoyed somebody. Upon viewing her TikTok, they saw that on the day in question, she was wearing the same outfit, filmed herself in Target picking out items, and even depositing them in her car after leaving the store. I have looked at her TikTok account, and I couldn't quite find that video, but I did find, it was definitely her account, I did find Marlena addressing it. She posted a jokey video of her getting dressed and saying, "We're going to talk about the elephant in the room," where it's just her putting on her makeup. But she does mention in the text, she says this: "All jokes aside, guys, just know my team is managing the situation and everything is okay," in all caps. "My kids, my family, my home are all okay. Despite the unfortunate situation that's unfolded," as if she had nothing to do with it, "your continued love and support means everything to me." There were no comments on this post. "While there will be a time to discuss my wrongings, now is not that moment. And it doesn't mean that I don't want to speak on it or take accountability for my actions. It means everything is still being dealt with in court. So I just ask to please respect that. I also want to be clear that this doesn't define who I am, and it doesn't reflect the person I strive to be. I do believe that we all make mistakes, and it's how we learn and grow from them that matters. I'm committed to doing better, not just for myself, but for my family and all of you who have supported me. Moving forward, I hope to continue sharing my life on here with you, all my ups, my downs, and the lessons I've learned along the way through all of this. That being said, for those of you who do still choose to support me, again, no comments, I want you to know that I appreciate you during this time, and it truly means the world to me and hasn't gone unnoticed. The sum of the goods stolen was about $500, so if she doesn't have any priors, she's probably going to get a slap on the wrist. She's a mother, you know. And last up today, we're going to say goodbye to a gentleman who recently passed. We may not have known him personally, but in many ways he touched all our lives. We say goodbye to Jim Abrams. Losing Jim, for those of us of a certain age, is like losing a part of our childhoods. We all remember the Naked Gun movies, if you're from the 80s, or watching reruns of Airplane and Leslie Nielsen on TV when we were kids. Top Secret, Ruthless People, the first Naked Gun, the two Hot Shots movies. It wasn't all parody and spoof, though. There was also Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, as well as his TV work. Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, I remember watching that. It was very heartfelt. Starred a young Winona Ryder. Outside of his film work, Jim and his wife Nancy founded the Charlie Foundation to help cure pediatric epilepsy. Jim is survived by Nancy and their 3 children and 3 grandchildren. He died at their home in Santa Monica. He was 80 years old. And that brings us to the end of This Week in Hell. This video should seem a little bit different to you. I finally got around to getting a teleprompter and a proper tripod, getting used to the setup, getting used to using it. Hopefully everything looks okay. I think I need to work on the lighting a little bit, but that's something we can work on in future. And by we, I mean me. I hope the new format is appealing, and it certainly does make things easier for me going forward, because it means I can properly script my news pieces. And it is nice to actually sit down and type something out more properly, instead of just making bullet points so I can do it more extemporaneously, which is fine. It works. It's quite quick to do it, but the fact of the matter is it's not really much longer scripting it out properly. I mean, the scripting might take a bit longer, but the recording process, not really. If anything, it's a bit easier, and will get easier as we go on, especially as I get used to my new equipment. Okay, with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for watching, and take very good care of yourselves. Bye-bye. That part wasn't scripted.